So hello and welcome everybody to our final plenary of this European Forum in Vienna. My name is Barbara Steiner. I am the director of Transform Europe, the foundation of the European Left Party and a network of nearly 40 Marxist and left-wing organizations all over Europe. I'm very happy to moderate today's session on convergences to forge a social, political, anti-austerity majority for equal rights, employment, peace and the climate, and I would add also democracy and everything that is good. So it is a broad topic and I'm very happy to be here. I will introduce the speakers before they take the floor, before taking their first contribution. And you will then have the chance, after the contributions, the introductions, to take also the floor with comments, with questions, and then we give back to the panel. But of course, the panelists can also react to each other. And I'm looking forward to an interesting debate. At 1:15, we should close this panel, and then directly after we will have the reading of the final declaration. The final declaration had been prepared by the preparatory group, and we will have three comrades whom I will introduce then, who will read it. And then, so there will be no break between this plenary and the reading of the final declaration. We will have it directly afterwards. So, we heard a lot on this forum about the phase of militarization and rearmament that we are in. We heard about the austerity policies and attacks on workers' rights that are being introduced again. We learned about the rise of authoritarian right and the normalization of their politics, the attack on migrants' rights, and the climate catastrophe, and at the same time the abandoning of the Green New and Social Deal. We heard about also, maybe not too much, but we will hear here also about the attack on gender equality rights and democracy. We heard about the reprivatization of care and the whole cosmos of care, which still remains invisible and unpaid. And it is mostly women who do the reproduction work. So now is the question, what is the role of the left, green and progressive actors and politicians? And what can be convergences? I'm also always interested in divergences, so I think this is also always interesting to discuss upon. And what are the next strategic steps? And now I'm happy to introduce as a first speaker Sokrátis Fámellos. He is the leader of Syriza Progressive Alliance in Greece since November 2024. In July 2023, he was appointed as the head of the parliamentary group of the official position party. He played a leading role in the development and coordination of energy and environmental policies with a focus on environmental and social justice as head of the environment and energy sector of Syriza. So many thanks, Sokrátis. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Barbara. Dear friends and dear comrades, I'm very glad to participate at the 9th Forum of Left, Green and Progressive Forces. Since its beginning, 2017, the European Forum has provided a space for collective reflection and the search for synthesis and areas of convergence. In an era of profound and rapid changes, where peace and democracy are under threat, humanity is being questioned, the international law is discredited, and climate crisis and biodiversity loss are accelerating, inequalities are increasing, the importance of the European Forum is greater than ever. We must safeguard and reinforce it as a major tool to enhance this necessary dialogue of the progressive forces and promote common initiatives for an alternative strategy for Europe. We are facing a dark era of rising far-right forces, Trumpified politics, renewed wars, and the triumph of power over diplomacy and international law. We have witnessed the first genocide of the 21st century, the genocide unfolding in the Gaza Strip. We are witnessing the complete erosion of the European project as envisioned by its founders, the bulwark against war and fascism. Today, both of these evils have returned, threatening peoples, democracy, and peace. The dominant economic system is reaching its breaking point, as profit for a few prioritizes over social justice and environmental sustainability. Technology progress unfolds within widening inequality and security, while global climate commitments and the Green Deal stay on paper and remains largely unfulfilled. Overconsumption and resource depletion push the planet towards irreversible damage, hitting the most vulnerable the hardest. Amid uncertainty and political inaction, neoliberal forces tighten control, undermining democracy and fueling the rise of the far-right rhetoric. The left has an historic duty, as it always has, to rise to the challenge of our time and to fight for peace, democracy, equality, and solidarity, to fight against racism, fascism, social inclusion and inequalities, to fight the climate crisis. This forum marks a vital step forward on the path toward that shared vision, a vision we owe to our youth, to the generation yet to come. Dear friend, as Pope said, the world is thirsting for peace. We have welcomed the agreement reached in Gaza, which, however limited and precarious, has allowed the release of the last hostages held by Hamas and hundreds of Palestinians imprisoned in Israeli jails. At the same time, we must unite our voices with the Palestinian people and demand the immediate end of the Israeli aggression, the cease of Israeli settlements in the West Bank, and the implementation of UN resolutions and international law for a two-state solution and an independent Palestinian state within the 1967 borders. The situation is equally worrisome regarding the Trump administration policies. Trump's sidelining the UN Security Council and the international community highlights the dangers of European governments endorsing and applauding his policies. Progressive forces must push the EU to shift its approach, strengthen strategic autonomy, and adopt more independent, responsible aspects. Firstly, Europe must develop an independent foreign policy that prioritizes the needs of its citizens over transatlantic interest. This policy should be guided by peace, justice, and respect for international law and the UN Charter, and lessons should be learned from the EU missteps in the Russian-Ukrainian war. Secondly, we oppose the ReArm program, which diverts 800 billion euros from vital social investments in health, education, labor, and climate actions to military spending. Instead, Europe should focus on active diplomacy, respect for national sovereignty, and establishing a cooperative and just system of collective security. Thirdly, the Green Deal must be reinforced through political commitment, transparency, and accountability to ensure fair redistribution of resources and a just and equitable transition towards sustainability and social justice. The Trump presidency makes it urgent for the EU to strengthen the political independence and security architecture through decisive strategic action. And it's doubly provocative and dangerous that in the wrong decision to militarize Europe, the EU accepted a partnership with Turkey, a country that violates international law in the Eastern Mediterranean, illegally occupies the territory of any EU member state, the Republic of Cyprus, and maintains an open casus belli against another EU member, Greece. The current situation in Greece bears striking similarities to the wider European landscape, where social and political crises are commonplace. Austerity policies and the deregulation of the welfare state have exacerbated inequalities and weakened states' protection, leaving large sections of society exposed to hardship and insecurity. Meanwhile, the excessive profits of oligopolies, banks, energy, food suggest an economy that benefits only a select few. In Greece, the housing crisis deepens social exclusion amid a broader democratic decline marked by media control and the restriction of democratic and human rights. The Nea Demokratia government is advancing a neoliberal agenda that is aligned with Europe conservative forces. At the same time, it's enabling the far right to capitalize on public disappointment. In the face of this impasse, Syriza, our party, is calling for a broad, progressive alliance rooted in democratic, socialist, and ecologic values to rebuild trust and provide a viable vision for the country's future. Dear friends, the cooperation of lefts, Greens, and the progressive forces should challenge the current capitalist system and lead to the transformations in society and the economy, both in national but also in European level. Restoring trust in policies and strengthening citizens' participations are essential to renewing institutions and democracy. Progressive and democratic forces must unite to confront austerity, corruption, inequality, and the far right's advance. A cohesive and courageous left, rooted in democratic, feminist, and ecological values, can inspire young people and drive meaningful change. Through broad alliance committed to peace, democracy, and the rule of law, a powerful social and political front can emerge to reshape the future. The recent presidential elections in the Republic of Ireland and the coalition government in Spain provide two great examples in which the cooperation of a broad spectrum of left forces lead to electoral wins. Europe needs a clear, democratic agenda for economic transformation, climate actions, and social rights, one that is radical yet realistic and inspires citizens to engage with and believe in change. We must work on this. This should be our priority and our purpose. This is our responsibility. Thank you.
Many thanks. Sokrátis, broad alliances is what we need. Many thanks. I introduce now our second speaker, Cornelia Hildebrandt. Cornelia had been a co-founder of Transform. She is the editor of Transform's main publication, Transform Review, the coordinating editor. She had been co-president from 2020 to 24, and she does research on European actors and elections at Rosa Luxemburg Foundation and Transform, and is member of Die Linke in Germany. She will speak in German, so if you don't speak German, please take your headsets.
I like to speak in German.
So, Conny, the floor is yours.
Because the topic is not so easy. Ja, schön, dass ich hier heute noch mal sprechen kann.
Very nice that I have the opportunity to take the floor again here. I think we heard a lot of things in the past 2 days about what the left is supposed to do. And I'm very happy that we can speak about these things in very specific terms. We talked about housing, about the situation of the welfare state, about the fact that the window is closing in terms of a possible Green Deal. We're talking about very specific projects. And we also spoke about the idea of a different Europe. What's missing here are the steps in between the specific projects and the idea of a different Europe. So what we're missing is, for example, the question of what we want to achieve in the next 5 years, and that's why I want to talk about convergence and strategic development. What does strategy even mean? It means coming up with a goal. For example, a different Europe is possible. It means to analyze, as Sokrátis just did, the current situation. So what development phase of capitalism are we in right now? And what are the potential of the progressive or left forces? And if you start from the back, you know that the European left has about a third of the seats in the European Parliament, and only in a few countries is the left really strong. And where it is strong, it is very often separated or divided. The left in Europe is currently experiencing, or in Germany is experiencing, a boost, and this is something we enjoy, and we have to make sure to take this momentum and translate it into sustainable and concrete projects. But it's not that easy, because in Germany, as everywhere else in Europe, the left only makes up a third of the progressive political landscape. So 36% of the progressive parties are represented in the National Assembly, which is not the majority. And the second problem is that from these 36%, the votes were only exchanged among each other, for example, in favor of the radical left, which is good for us, but at the same time it shows that we did not succeed. Any of the three political parties of the progressive left did not succeed in gaining new voters to join them. And this is a concrete and lasting problem for the left, not just in Germany, but all over Europe. In Germany, and I think this is also important or interesting for the European context, we are discussing certain strategic approaches. But to do that, we need to know the point of departure. But this is often described in different terms. My colleague and friend Mario Candayas talked about the blocked social ecological transformation with a tendency of fascism. There's a second big development in the left that says that the dividing line is the question of those who want to support the fascist forces and those who reject the fascist forces. Both approaches are linked to different strategies. The approach of blocked transformation is combined with the idea of a social popular front from below, similar to the Front Populaire in France, and of course we always try to find out what we can learn from other countries. And the second thing is the formation of an antagonistic pole of hope for a transformative left. And in Germany we saw that the Conservative Party, for example, did that, and that was the so-called anti-fascist momentum for the left. So we have to create an anti-fascist pole, and that is a question not just for the German but also for the European left. How can you create an alliance from the bottom up, but at the same time an antagonistic pole or a polarity to the other two things? And that is the question that we haven't answered yet. Those who assume that there is a central dividing line, fascism versus anti-fascism, in the German discourse combine this with the necessary project of a coalition between the progressive parties and the forces
möglichst zu verhindern.
That try to prevent the right from gaining power. And those who demand this also say that this means that every party needs to enter into a compromise, including the left. And for the left, this means compromise in terms of the peace movement. So we have to take seriously the security needs of the majority of the population and have to think about a left peace policies. We know that especially here at the European Forum of the Progressive Left, the question of peace is one of the big questions that we talk about. We know the positions of our own party, of the European Left, and we know that the position of the European Left Alliance refers to international law and human rights. But there's a difference.
Von der Grenze zur russischen Grenze. Meine linken Position entwickeln auch meine friedenspolitischen
between developing your peace positions right next to the Ukrainian-Russian border, or if you're 1,000 kilometers away from that border. But if you take it seriously, you have to ask yourself, the pacifist position, which is what the left party favors, is not believed by the majority of the people in our countries. So how can we convince the majority of the people in our countries of a sustainable peace policy that also takes into consideration the peace movement of the European left? And if we talk about European or about the left's possibility to defend itself, and in Germany especially we talk about this. Is this possible in terms of the unhindered militarization that we're currently experiencing, or is it not just an illusion? And I think we need to answer this question in the next 3 years. And it's terrible if the left is divided in terms of the peace movement. In Germany, we are debating the possibility of an anti-fascist, a social anti-fascist movement, an alliance, and that means combining social questions with questions of security, questions of subsistence and democratization of the society. So we are trying to come up with an alternative security concept. And we know that within the left there are different positions, but different positions are normal. This is part of our DNA. At the same time, it's not a problem if it still becomes possible, as my colleague Hans-Jürgen Obern said a few years ago, to create a rational picture out of the different positions. A mosaic, if you will. A mosaic means that you remain true to your own identity, but you still find possibilities to connect to other pieces or other approaches. Of course, we don't want any picture to emerge from this. Our image, our picture must be tied to the idea of a class compass. We want to focus on the perspective of those who are most marginalized, who have to fight for their survival, but who are also part of the group who are least benefiting from the current development. So we have to implement concrete steps, and that's what we're currently doing. We have to make sure that there is a connection between the different struggles, and that is the big challenge that we're facing. Here we are at the Forum of the Progressive Left, but in fact, if we look at the participants, this is mostly the representatives of the left. So we have to think about how to open up the space even more, how to find formats that better reflect our diversity. And I think we discussed this diversity very well, but we need to open up the space even more, because it's clear that peace is not everything, but without peace, everything is nothing. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Cornelia Hildebrandt. So we will have now a short video. The video is by a video message by Bjørnar Moxnes from the Red Party of Norway. He's a member of the parliament and the former chair of the party. And it will be shown now here behind us. And then afterwards, his comrade Magne Kaldhusdal will take the floor here. But first, the video, please.
I would like to greet the conference on behalf of the Red Party and tell about our experiences. The last 15 years, the Red Party has grown from approximately 1,500 members, nobody in the parliament, to 14,000 members, 9 MPs, and has become a much more important party for the labor unions in Norway. So I will share some of our experiences, which might be useful for you as well. The first thing is that we have put first and foremost the struggle between the majority, the working people, and the ruling class, the oligarchs. Instead of the continuing race to the bottom, tax the rich more so we can pay for welfare to everybody. Second, we have had and strengthened the cooperation with the labor unions for labor rights. Introduced legislation that strengthens the right to permanent employment and that battles the commercial staffing agencies, both in the private sector and in the public. It's a growing problem, especially within healthcare and hospitals. And if you want strong labor unions, people need the right and possibility to actually have permanent employment and not being hired in through these staffing agencies. The third point is the struggle for affordable housing and to introduce politics to build houses both for hire and for sale that are price regulated and not just in the so-called free markets. The fourth point is the struggle to take back national control over the energy and the electricity prices and production. One of the major problems behind the increasing problems in Europe is the prices for energy. This has become a private market, a commercial market with almost no political and democratic control. So one of the Red Party's main demands is to take back the control, to put a maximum price on energy, and not allow the so-called free market to set these prices. If we allow this to happen, it will demolish the industry in Norway and also in Europe and be very harmful for the working people with bigger and bigger energy prices. The fifth point is the struggle for people's right to self-determination, whether they live in Palestine or in Ukraine. We oppose all kinds of imperialism, whether it comes from Washington, D.C. or from the Kremlin. The sixth point is to strengthen our common struggle against the nuclear arms race. This is an existential threat to the whole world, and we must work harder to stop this nuclear arms race. And the last point is to strengthen the national defense, rejecting the American military bases and the Trump demand of spending 5% of the GDP on the military, but also strengthen the national defense capabilities to become less dependent of the U.S.
I think he was nearly finished. So I give now the floor to Magne Kaldhusdal. He became a member of Red Party in 21, was during 70s and 80s member of the Norwegian Marxist-Leninist Maoist movement, and in Red Party he has been a member of the International Committee of the Red Party. And Cornelia also talked about the contradictions or splits in the peace question, and I'm looking forward to hear now also contradictory and divergent positions. The floor is yours, Magne.
No? Ah, okay. I turned it off. Thank you very much for inviting me to give this presentation. Bjørnar Moxnes has presented the overall policy of the Norwegian Red Party. I'll focus on the following question, based on my personal opinion. How can the European left best promote peace and security in today's Europe? My presentation is based on 10 statements that I believe should be central to the development of the security policy of the European left. Statement 1. All countries have an equal right to self-determination. Statement 2. No country has the right to dominate any other country. These two statements sum up the essence of international law. Officially, they have been uncontroversial among most of the world leaders after 1945, although we know that several of them have violated international law in practice. What is new today is that some state leaders openly disregard international law, even in words. Well-known examples are Vladimir Putin, Donald Trump, and Benjamin Netanyahu. Because of this, it is more important than ever to support international law. Statement 3. No country can rely on the UN or international agreements as sufficient security guarantees. The establishment of the UN was a major progressive achievement, and yet we cannot rely on the UN as a sufficient security guarantee. As long as hegemonic powers have veto rights in the UN cannot be guarantor of international law. It is also painful to admit that international agreements cannot be seen as generally sufficient security guarantees. The so-called Budapest Memorandum from 1994 can serve as an example. This agreement, signed by Russia, the United States, the United Kingdom, and Ukraine, prohibited the signing states from threatening or using military force or economic coercion against Ukraine. France and China gave individual assurances in separate documents, and yet, when one of the signatories broke the agreement in 2014, it turned out that the agreement had no practical value for Ukraine. Statement 4. Neutrality is not a sufficient guarantee against military aggression. Declaration of neutrality may be useful and progressive under certain circumstances. My own country, Norway, has declared itself neutral during several periods of time. Neutrality kept Norway out of the First World War, but could not prevent us from becoming involved in the Napoleonic Wars in the early 19th century, nor did it prevent the German occupation in 1940. And Ukraine's declared neutrality did not prevent Russia's invasion in 2014. Statement 5. Disarmament cannot provide security for European countries. It would have been wonderful if disarmament could solve Europe's security challenges. Unfortunately, that is not the case as long as we are facing hegemonic great powers willing to wage aggressive wars to achieve their goals. Under these circumstances, disarmament would strengthen Russia and the USA, who both see Europe as a playground where they can argue over who to dominate. Statement 6. In today's Europe, post-Soviet countries outside of NATO are in the most precarious security situation. Russia's invasion of Ukraine suggests a desire to regain control over former Soviet republics in Europe. Post-Soviet countries outside NATO face the highest risk of suffering the same fate as Ukraine. This is particularly true if these countries wish to pursue a Moscow independent course. Statement 7. European countries need a defense that is independent from the US, China, and Russia. European countries are caught in a squeeze between American and Russian hegemonism. European countries cannot withstand the pressure from American and Russian hegemonism if they lack a defense, or have a defense that is dependent on the USA. European countries need their own defense technologies and weapons industry based on supply lines that ensure independence from the US, China, and Russia. Statement 8. The European left should make people aware of the growing ideological gap between the US and Europe. Statement 9. There is a growing understanding that European countries should not base their security on assistance from the USA. The far-right politics of the MAGA movement shares similarities with Putin's authoritarian policies. The MAGA movement has contact with and supports the far right in Europe and other parts of the world. This creates a growing ideological divide between the US and Europe. This gap can be exploited by the left in our struggle against the offensive from the far right and the big capital, both in Europe and globally. One of the biggest challenges we face is convincing people that Europe can become independent of the US armed forces. The developing gap between the US and Europe increases the possibility that European countries in the end will choose to stand on their own feet. Statement 10. Hegemonism and war of aggression must be met with solidarity between European countries, including military aid if requested by the victim country. Europe is facing hegemonism from the US and Russia, and war of aggression from Russia. This situation requires solidarity and cooperation between the European countries. The task of the European left is to fight for this cooperation to be based on independence from both the US and Russia, for equality between states and nations, the struggle for democracy and a free and strong trade union movement, and fight against the oppression of minorities. In a world where major powers wage wars of aggression, it is also necessary that solidarity between countries includes military assistance when legitimate authority of an attacked country requests it. A final comment. I consider these statements as a proposal for further discussions among the European left. Thank you for your attention.
Many thanks, Magne. And I give now the floor to Hélène Bidard. She is a member of the National Executive Committee of the French Communist Party in charge of the relations with the Party of the European Left. She is a feminist activist and deputy mayor in Paris, responsible for gender equality, youth and popular education. Many thanks, Hélène. You are jumping in at very short notice for Comrade Boulet, who could not come here, so many thanks for taking the floor. Hélène will speak in French.
Merci beaucoup, merci chère Barbara. J'excuse donc Vincent Boulet. Je voulais commencer par remercier Sokrátis qui en effet a dit l'importance d'abord de ce forum comme un outil majeur de partage ensemble, d'échange. C'est bon? Okay. De partage
Can you hear us? Yes.
y a un problème de traduction.
Can you hear the translation?
Je remercie Sokrátis aussi, alors je le refais.
I just wanted to thank Sokrátis. Thank you.
Je le remercie d'avoir souligné l'importance de ce forum.
I wanted to thank him for showing us how important this forum is to take a step forward. Our common ideas, our common concepts, our political power based on trade unions and other social movements. I wanted to say that the question of convergences within the left is of central importance. Political and trade union forces also cooperate and work based on convergences. We need to organize this every day, both on the level of elected representatives and trade unionists, and convergences are, as I said, of central importance for the European left. The General Secretary of the French Party, I come from a region in France, in the north of France, which is strongly affected by deindustrialization. And this is, of course, this is due to European and national politics. So we have so this region in the north of France was a historic stronghold of the left and is now dominated by the far right. So far, the left has not managed to gain a foothold again in this region. In 2022, one vote or one seat was regained from the Rassemblement National, but in 2024 the Rassemblement National was able to make further progress. So people there are despair, there's a certain lack of perspectives. And that's the ideal. These are the ideal circumstances for the far right, and the left is not in a position to find answers to the needs of the population there. So we have to react to their despair. We have to show people that we are able to react to the situation. We often have the feeling that there are disasters, catastrophes, and that we just can stand by and watch things helpless from the sidelines. The capitalist logic has resulted in a division of the working class, which again supports the case of the far right. In order to form alliances within the left, and in order to regain majorities, we have to offer hope to the working class. Social questions are very important because injustice is becoming ever more pronounced. We need to change the tax system for wealthy people. 21% of the population in the European Union live in poverty. These are 93 million people in the European Union. In France, we can see that according to the statistics, poverty has increased, in particular between 2022 and 2023. In this period, 650,000 people then became poor. So their number has increased to 9.14 million people
has increased from 9.14 million to 9.79 million people. 0.001% of the richest people in Europe were able to increase their wealth by 237% between 1995 and 2021. The 500 billionaires in Europe only have to pay 0.25% in taxes. So there does not seem to be any hope for the peoples of Europe. They are falling into poverty. There's no reaction on behalf of European governments, and the European Union has not reacted either. They even imposed austerity measures in 2024. So there is a political dimension. There are also austerity measures at national level. There are always discussions about the budget, and we also see a responsibility of the European Commission in this context. We have to fight these austerity measures. On the other hand, there is a rearmament. There are rearmament measures. And this war economy was also mentioned by Ursula von der Leyen in her speech on the State of the Union on the 10th of September 2025. There is a new composition of the far right, not only of the far right, but there's also a convergence of right-wing parties, as we have seen it in Italy. There's a new type of capitalism that is currently emerging. The right-wing forces are supported by parts of the ruling party in Europe, directly and indirectly also by bourgeois classes. In the case of the Rassemblement National in France, we see that its history goes back to fascism in Europe. But we can now see that some of the conservative forces also want to cooperate with the far-right party. There is a plan of national priorities. And it has become normal that the ruling classes and the right-wing parties cooperate. So they even support austerity measures, and the far right would go even further than the conservative parties in power. So we, as the European left, have to form alliances, and that we do not remain alone in our kitchens, as Rosa Luxemburg said. So we have to work together in order to gain majorities and offer alternatives to the European people. And we have to find and come up with ideas how we can do it. So what is our role? We have to organize assemblies. We have to organize meetings, and we have to be relentless when it comes to our contents. We have to form alliances between a maximum number of people and communicate these contents to them. In France, we have a 30%, we've gained 30% as left-wing parties, and there are various constellations. Unfortunately, the party was divided and split, and so we were not able to achieve a greater share of the votes. in the first round of elections, the far right achieved 1.5 million of votes, more than all of the left-wing parties. So we have to join forces in order to gain more of the votes. And in order to do that, we have to answer the following questions. So there is an ideological struggle. We have to fight against the dismantling of science. We have to fight against privileges. There is there are certain power relations, a certain cooperation between the ruling class and right-wing parties. So we as left groups and trade unions have to cooperate. This is the basis of left alliances, and that's in the interest of the working class. We have to unite the working class because the right-wing parties try to divide society based on racist and xenophobic bases. But we have to unite the workers in spite of this populism, of right-wing populism. We must not always discuss only discuss different programs, but we have to take very specific steps in order to fight right-wing dominance. We have to change the way in which we think about that. And finally, I want to underline that there are three key principles. A very specific example from France. We have to define political measures in the interest of the working class. We need tax reforms. There is a certain Sukman tax in France, a tax to tax the rich. So there is money, but we have to take this money from the 500 richest families in France and Europe. We also need a plan for investments. We can finance 100 billion euros per year over 5 years. And this could be achieved by taxing the greatest wealth in Europe. We also need social protection, which has to be increased. Let me just briefly talk about the pension reform in France. This started with a right-wing government. And the right-wing government divided the working class. They told workers that they had to work longer, and also compared the pension system with other European countries in order to improve the situation. So there were austerity measures and used other European countries as a pretext in order to increase the retirement age. And the French population was absolutely against it. There were huge protests, there were 14 strikes, and this is the most important social movement that we have seen in a very long time. But the government does not take this seriously. They do not listen to the people and this social democratic movement. So the pension reform was then submitted to Parliament. We don't hold a majority there. We are only a minority in the Parliament. But the government did not listen to the protesters. Our Prime Minister back then used an article of the Constitution It was Article 49.3. In order to implement the reform, we had 5 prime ministers in France, and this pension reform is the start of a crisis for social democracy. The plan is to abolish social democracy. And of course, there is a connection between generations. There was solidarity among the generations, between the generations. And people joined forces in order to protest against this reform, which resulted in a major crisis in France. So this reform was put to a halt. It was suspended, and there even was a session of parliament when 14 hours were spent talking about this pension reform. But we do not know what the result will be in the end, what the future will hold when it comes to the pension reform. Emmanuel Macron wanted to show us that he wanted to abide by budget rules and did not want to listen to the people and social democracy. So it was really important to have this pension reform suspended. And this was really important for us as the Left Alliance. So we need a democratic reorganization. In France, the word republic is not neutral, but it corresponds to what Jean Jaurès once said. Democracy has to be enshrined in the word republic. We have to create conditions not only for political democracy, but also for a social and economic democracy. We see that liberalism has divided society. We need diplomacy also at an international level. We need security. We need political solutions for conflicts, and we also have to find the resources together in order to join forces and form alliances to make the left movement strong again, so that we can effectively fight the right-wing parties and that we can win together. Thank you.
Many thanks, Hélène. And I give now directly the floor to you, the other participants, to the audience. Who wants to take the floor? Please give me a sign with a show of hands for questions or comments. Yes, I don't know if we have somebody who can bring you the mic. Yes, Dagmar is volunteering. Many thanks, Dagmar.
Who was it?
Okay. Hi, we started the campaign Stop Rearm Europe. This is fine. On the other hand, the comrade from Norway demand to strengthen the national arm industry. I think this is a contradiction, because it's not the task of radical left to strengthen national defense. And I think we are in the tradition of our grandfather Karl Liebknecht, who said the main enemy of us is in our own country. So, and part of this main enemy is also the national arm industry. So in Germany, we start the campaign Disarm Rheinmetall. I think in this way we must go on and not to strengthen our so-called national defense force. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a request for the floor by the comrade here in the front. No? Or Aline, who was the next? I didn't see it, sorry. No, here in the front, please, Dagmar. Yes.
Ouais, David pour le Parti communiste français. Je voulais intervenir sur le même sujet que le collègue.
I want to say something That's really important, really important request. Without peace, we cannot develop anything. We cannot develop social protection, nor protect the workers. We need peace for that. And we can't make the people afraid. We shouldn't keep saying Trump and Putin and the oligarchs will, and the autocrats will create war, because behind all of them there are peoples. Also the Russian and the American people want peace, and I think it's important to realize that our political will in Europe should be directed towards the rejection of war. We should put everything on diplomacy, because Europe has a lot of diplomatic weight. The budget should be spent on social projects and not on militarization. And within this cooperation, we also need a common defense strategy, but that should be focused on diplomacy and on security and not on war. And this is something that you have to decide together with the citizens and not with the elites. There's an important document that details exactly this question. We don't have enough money to spend on infrastructure at the moment, on airports, roadworks, and so on. And all of this money cannot be put into armament. We need it for our infrastructure in Europe. And we have to keep expanding our infrastructure exclusively for civil purposes. Thank you.
C'est important de ne pas oublier qu'il y a de l'interprétation et donc de ne pas parler trop vite parce que les interprètes sinon n'arrivent pas.
Going to please try to speak slowly enough so the interpreters can follow.
So please try to speak slowly enough so the interpreters can interpret you well. Who is the next comment or question? I didn't see any hand.
Oh, over there.
Yes, I see a hand there. Sorry. Maybe a woman then also?
Thank you. My name is Arnjot Ask from Red Party, Norway. Since there was some comments on our decisions to have a national defense, I will give some short comments. Bjørnar Moxnes, in his video, he said that he stressed that we are against the 5%, the Rearm Europe project. We are, and the confrontation politics in Europe, and that he also specified that we are against the US bases now in Norway, especially also concerning atomic weapon, that Norway take part in maneuvers with atomic weapons through this alliance with the US. So, but we had a decision on last year on the national defense, that since Norway, our party is not a pacifist. We are for self-governance and for self-reliance. So we are against NATO. We have been against NATO all the way since the founding. And now, actually, NATO is occupying Norway. There are 12 US bases in Norway with the US majority and rulership laws. And there are, like in the rest of the Nordic countries, there are more than 30 others. And there also are in the atomic armaments placed in warcrafts and in other transport facilities entering the bases in Norway. There are atomic weapons. So the base policy of Norway, that we are against atomic weapon on the ground of Norway. it is broken by this alliance with US and NATO. So we are opposing this together with all the, the project here against the US, the Euro, rearm Euro project, etc. So, so there are discussions, like Magne also said, there are different positions in the party, and there was big discussions in our party also about this national defense. So, but this is the situation. And
Thank you.
In the same line as Bjørnar Moxnes also said.
Thank you for this amendment of a, I think, broad convergence, the nuclear weapon-free Europe. And we have a woman asking for the floor now. I'm happy about it, Claudia. And then Enrique.
Thank you. And I also thank the comrade from Norway, what he made clear that we've got many things in common. But still I want to point out that I'm not happy with the idea of declaring the export of weapons as help. Because actually, if we look at the case of Ukraine, we see that the most pressing military problem of Ukraine is not ammunition and tanks, but it's young men who are willing to die at the front. So actually, young men are now on the streets, abducted, sent to the front and die there. And many, many hundreds of thousands of men have left the country because they don't want to fight this warfare. So if we take the stance that our help should be military, in a military way, we have to acknowledge that this is a very slippery slope, where we come into an all-out military confrontation because the real military help would be to send soldiers there. And I hope that we all see the danger of this. So please, let's talk about what solidarity could actually be, how we can actually help people. And for Ukraine, the people of Ukraine, it actually we are in a situation that they don't own their country anymore. They've been sold out to huge companies internationally. So to talk about that helps more than to talk about weapons. Thank you.
Thank you. Enrique here in the front, and then I see you. Yes, Enrique, please.
Yes. Thank you, Barbara. Enrique Carmona, Trade Unionists Network Europe. I don't have any statement, but I have a question for each one of you. Okay? So, starting with Sokrátis, my question is, what concrete steps can be taken to forge a broad left alliance that includes grassroots movements, trade unions, and progressive parties? This is for you, Sokrátis. Of course. What concrete steps can be taken to forge a broad left alliance? Okay, but including all the parties that I have mentioned. Connie, I have another one for you. What common principles can serve as a class compass? You have mentioned the class compass very rightly, but what common principles can serve as a class compass to unite diverse struggles across Europe? Tricky, I know, but you mention it. Bjørn, how do we navigate ideological tensions? And you have raised a number of tension in the room, while maintaining unity around core democratic and social values. How we do it? And last but not least, Hélène, what electoral or civil strategies can help transform this convergence that we are talking about into a majority capable of challenging austerity and militarism? Yeah? Thank you.
Many thanks. And the floor goes to, if no woman asks for the floor, then it goes to you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Alexander Kisilov, and I'm from Ukrainian Social Ruch. I wanted to ask questions, also particular to the panelists, since the rearmament and militarization and contracting it is on the agenda. So what is your actual security policy? Not except for hoping for the best that the war will never come, if it happens. what is your answer? If it's not the neoliberal governments that you have, if you were in power, how would you respond? You live in the European Union, part of which is something that Russia claims, that Russia wants to control without any arguments. And if Russia, just like with Ukraine, which nobody believed in, decides to take it in its hands, what would be the response of the left? What will be your solidarity? And what kind of security you offer if you're criticizing what's happening? You don't need to support rearmament as it goes, but how you assess the situation. The military budgets that are spent, they are already quite high, but is any country in Europe is capable even of defending itself, not even talking about helping to other countries, what's supposed to be the solidarity. Not some expeditionary corps sending somewhere in the world to control oil or some other resources, but actual support. Because many people talk about solidarity here, but I talk to Lithuanian comrades who are threatened by a lot of members of the Russian government. This is so much normalized that the foreign ministers, the members of the government, the members of the parliament are openly questioning what is Lithuania. But they come to Germany, they're trying to support Die Linke to reach out to the Lithuanian living in Germany. And Die Linke goes in the parliament and they vote against sending German troops to be in solidarity with Lithuania, the small country which is openly threatened by Russia. So what is your answer? What is happening? And you are talking about Ukraine. People are exhausted because they are left alone. Even taking some arms from Europe, it takes ages. It takes so much pressure. Of course, people are exhausted because they are left alone to die in this country, because all Europe is just expressing concerns and talking about negotiations that are now refused by Putin, who just claims we want capitulation. So what is your security policy? Thank you.
Many thanks for the questions, for the concrete steps.
Hello, Néstor Prieto from the Communist Party of Spain, Izquierda Unida. I highly support previous people talks, and I think that we as a left, we shouldn't have a naive vision of security, a naive vision of defense. We are on a comfortable position because we are not used to govern, so it's always really easy to say, yeah, we don't want NATO, but for sure, the alternative for guaranteeing our security shouldn't be on the frame of the US imperialism institutions. So for us, it's so clear. It's true that we need to have a serious debate about security. And it's true that this is a crucial point on our current society and states. But for sure, collective security and defense of our sovereignty is a false debate in the frame of EU and US imperialism. So the solution shouldn't be inside those institutions, for sure. There is no sovereignty in defense of our interests under the framework of NATO and the US interest. The lesser evil is not the best. And the lesser evil shouldn't be investing 5% percentage of our GDP just to guarantee not the aggression of a third country, but the occupation of our sovereignty. Has happened in Norway, has happened in Spain with several US military troops inside, thousands of them. Especially because it is the working class, those who goes to the war, those who die in war, and especially because it's social spending for our class, which is going through armament. So for us, it's true, we need a serious debate about collective sovereignty, the collective security system. And it's true that it's an uncomfortable debate for us. But the lesser evil shouldn't be ever an option. This is since the First World War, when we were giving money to send our comrades, our working class colleagues to the war. This couldn't be a real option today. So we understand, and we, as a left, we need a serious debate about collective security, but never putting the working class in the middle, never with our money for our education and healthcare system, and never feeding the war machine, because we, the working class, are the ones who go to the war. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no hands to take the floor, neither by men nor women. That's why oh, yes, there is still one request for the floor. Many thanks. And then we will come back.
Hallo, mein Name ist Susanne Empacher und ich werde jetzt in Deutsch.
My name is Susanne Empacher. I'm going to speak in German, if this is possible. I'm a member of the Communist Party in Vienna, in Austria. I understand that there's a lot of emotion involved because there is this threat of war. And what are the steps of resistance that we can take? I think in the last days we decided to try to find a way to reach out to women. We had a women's assembly yesterday, and it is important to look at our everyday lives. If we do not democratize everyday lives, we cannot ask people to fight for democracy. In Austria is not a NATO member state. This is not, but the situation is still bad. Money is used for rearmament. But what is interesting, in the Austrian army, we have many young men who have a migration background, who are members of the working class. So if there was a situation of war and the Austrian army had to defend Austria, people with a migrant background would defend our country. And this is an interesting aspect because our society has changed and the left and the working class have also changed. So how can we reach out to people? And this would also be a task of the left, also in Austria. We do not yet have a movement against this armament, against this rearmament, not only talking about security, but talking about social security. Not only talking about whether we are for or against armament, but because we need a democratic influence on people who are not represented in parliament. And I think that we need action. We do not only have to interpret the world, because we really need to change something.
I have now still one last request for the floor, and then we will come back to our panelists.
So on the first day, on Friday, I was kind of happy to see that in this place, it's like a parallel universe where the people do not follow the logic of war and militarization that is present all outside. Today the situation is slightly different, so still people following the logic of war. I mean, for the colleagues from our comrades from Ukraine, I understand if you are actually in a war, so it's very hard to see out of this pit and be for peace and against militarization then. But yeah, still disappointed that like others don't follow this. So my question would be to Cornelia. So in her statement, she said, so the dividing line is between, on the one side, having like a broad coalition on the left, but then we would have to give up our struggle for peace and pacifism. And of course, we don't want to do this. So if the one is the thesis and the other is the antithesis, so what's the solution? What's the synthesis?
Thank you for this question that brought now again 4 other comrades to raise their hand. How do we solve this? Yes, be really brief.
We have 30 minutes till the end of the session. Just remind we need to answer from panelists.
I personally think that none of us is in a position to give lessons of pacifism to our Ukrainian comrades. Instead of that, we should face the truth. It is a difficult truth. And this truth is that we are failing to open the discussion about a common defense and security policy in Europe because a big part of the left is not interested in the strategic autonomy of Europe and is not interested in a direction of federalization. Their positions is in contrast with that. I'm not blaming them. They have a different position. And that's why we do not dare to touch the hot potato. Because if you open a serious discussion about what is a defense and security policy of Europe autonomous from the United States, then you will end up having to say very difficult things instead of avoiding them. So instead of giving lessons to Ukrainians about their dizziness because they are at war, their political dizziness because they are at war, we should congratulate them for giving a brave fight on behalf of all Europeans and especially of all Eastern Europeans that are openly threatened by the most revisionist authoritarian regime on the European continent. Enough.
Thank you. I have now the request by this comrade, this and this. Yeah, you still. I have to close the list of speeches. And I would like to ask you, I mean, emotions are important, but it's also important to stay calm and to discuss on same eye level with each other. So please. Where? The comrade with the long hair. And the comrade with the white shirt.
Yeah. Dear comrades, I would ask of you to I think we should push this discussion in a way where it is rooted in the material and social reality of our world. When we speak about Ukraine or any other people, or better said, working class that is fighting a resistance war, then of course the war of resistance is to be supported. The reality in Ukraine, but is that this war, yes, it is being fought by the working class, but the working class is not the one in charge of its resistance against the authority of the Russian Federation. And I think if we want that this war comes to an end in peace, and if we want to support the Ukrainian working class in its resistance against fascism, then we need to move this war in this resistance fight in a position where the working class of Ukraine is making the decisions and where we also at the same time push for a peace. Because yes, even though the working class of the Russian Federation is completely deluded and subdued by the propaganda of the fascist state, those are still working class people, and we need also by that to support the resistance inside of the Russian Federation. We need peace all over the world. We need decision making by the working class. Our goal should not be to support any state that wants to wage war, no matter what they are propagandizing to us that their goals are. The matter here, as it is always have been, is the working class fighting for the interests of the ruling class, and that must end, dear comrades. Thank you.
Thanks. Now the comrade with the white shirt.
No, in front of you. Yeah.
Patrick, thank you.
Yeah, I will be very quick because I think my comrade from Ukraine has better things to say than I. I would just like to point one thing. Throughout this whole forum, we have been talking about how we need to respect every nation's right to self-determination and to autonomy, how we need to listen to the people of Palestine and the people of West Sahara and the people of Catalonia and Ireland and so on, and we need to respect them and their decision on what they should do with their country. Except when it comes to Ukraine. When it comes to Ukraine, we do not listen to their people who are present with us. We do not listen to the people who say in every opinion poll and whatever that they want to continue and they don't want to capitulate to Russia. When it comes to Ukraine, every person in this room suddenly becomes so smart and start lecturing Ukrainians on what they should do with their country. No, we should be listening to them. And if they are saying to us that they need to defend themselves and we need to give them that opportunity, then we should have that discussion. We should not run away from our responsibility. We can disagree, you can have different opinions, but we cannot turn our back towards the question at hand. We are talking about peace, we should talk about peace, but the reality is war is in Europe, war is in Ukraine, and they are begging us to give them every possible option so they can defend themselves from Russia, and we are turning our back away from them. And that is not moral, and that is not right, and that is not in the spirit of the European left.
Thank you.
Dear comrades, my name is Vitaly Dudin. I came from Kiev, Ukraine, NGO Соціальний рух or social movement. So, we are in a big trouble, it's true. The war is here, the war is in Ukraine, the war is in Europe. And, you know, peace now, it's something like utopia. It's, I don't know, it's something that's not real. It's something opposite to what we have, because war is here, Putin tries to destabilize all the countries in the EU, and you will not have the normal life as it was before. Yes, I totally wish a good luck for French and the German workers to obtain the level of the welfare that was before, but now we have the new reality, and leftists should not fight the reality. They should fight against imperialism. They should stand on the solidarity ground. They should help to those people who are the most affected, those people who are most oppressed. We are, as Ukrainian left, supporting all the national emancipatory movements in the world. And we stood for Palestinian people in Kiev, in solidarity with those people who are striking against the Israeli military machine. And we are standing on the real solidaristic ground, and we understand that only solidarity is a response to the deaths and killings and to imperialism. It's impossible to maintain a life as it was before. And talking about some social contradictions which are deeply enrooted in capitalist system. Situation is much more worse than it was before. And I want to appreciate Magne, who told us that we should think at least about possibility for independent and sustainable defense policy. We are in 2025, and we should be in a modern reality, but not in a Cold War reality. I think that analysis of geopolitical relations is stuck in the times of Cold War, when we have, I don't know, American imperialism and the Eastern Bloc, and that's all. And we totally deny the agency of countries like Ukraine, for example. And it's a big pity for me to hear that you are denying the agency of Ukraine. I think that we should think globally. We should think about the perspective. And if leftists today will not decide on such simple issues like support for those who are oppressed, we will get even more trouble. Long live international solidarity. Stand with Ukraine.
Thank you. And the last request for the floor, Attila, please. And then we
Dear
give
comrades,
back to the
we are
panelists.
here to explain to everybody that we need peace. We have to collect all our forces. We are not here to defend any government in Europe, not only European Union. I am personally not here to defend Zelensky or Putin or somebody who wants to have more weapons. I was living 5 years in Ukraine, in Odessa. My comrades was killed in 2014 in Odessa. They are my comrades. Please, for their memory, have a common force to stop this war, not to die on this side, on the other side. Please, please help to make peace for everybody.
Thank you. I give now back to the panel in the different other way around order. So Hélène, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais être très courte. D'abord,
Thank you
merci
very much. I'm going
Barbara
to
d'avoir
be very short
laissé
about
la
this.
parole et d'avoir laissé tout le monde
Thank you,
pouvoir
Barbara, for
s'exprimer
giving
dans
us
ce
the
moment-là. Je pense que c'était important
opportunity for
de
everyone to
laisser
ask questions
l'expression
and
de tout le
to
monde.
make their comments.
Je vais
I
pas,
think
je
it's
me retrouve dans ce
important
qu'a
for
dit
everyone to have
Yanis,
that
ou encore
possibility.
Attila, c'est-à-dire que
Yanis
évidemment
and
personne n'a de leçons à
Attila
donner à personne,
said that
ni aux camarades
nobody
ukrainiens, ni je pense aux camarades de
can
Norvège qui ont quand
lecture
même pas mal de
anybody
frontières avec la
else,
Russie aussi.
neither the
Il faut être allé en
Ukrainians
Norvège,
nor the
c'est
Norwegians.
évidemment une autre
Norwegians have a long
réalité
border
que la
with
réalité
Russia, and they
française,
are
et donc
living in a completely
nous
different
devons
reality
tous
than the French, for
respecter ces
example. And
réalités-là
we have to
et comprendre
acknowledge
par
and
contre
respect these
notre
different
unité, notre
realities.
intérêt de classe.
But
Et je m'en
we are
arrêterai là parce que
still
nous
talking
avons eu
about our
deux
class
plénières
interests and about our
vendredi
unity,
qui
and
me
I
semblent étaient
believe
importantes,
this is
et notamment
as
des
much as
plénières où on
I
a pu
want to say
écouter
about
les
it, because we have
salariés et
two
les
plenaries
syndicalistes
where we
qui, à mon
talked
avis, sont
a
aussi
lot about
majeurs dans
this
la
issue, and
défense
we
de la
listened to the
paix.
trade unionists and
Ce
the
que je veux dire, c'est
workers
que la guerre, ça
who
n'est
are
pas le
mostly in
résultat
favor
d'un
of the
engrenage
peace.
contre lequel
War is
personne ne pourrait
not the
rien. C'est pas
result
tombé du ciel, si je peux m'exprimer ainsi. Mais c'est bien
of
un choix
unexpected
correspondant à des
circumstances.
intérêts
It didn't just
impérialistes, à
break
des
out.
intérêts de classe,
War
à des
is a
intérêts
choice
politiques de
that
certains. Et c'est
was
bien cela
made
qu'on
by
doit
the
pouvoir
imperialists'
analyser ensemble.
interests,
Et que
and it
dans
serves
tous
the
les cas, que ce
imperialist
soit
interests,
sur
and
la
that is why
question
we have to
ukrainienne,
analyze
et on
this
pourrait
war
parler aussi
together.
du Congo
Be
RDC, on pourrait
the
parler
question
du
of
Sud-Soudan,
Ukraine,
où un massacre
or also
se déroule
Congo,
actuellement, on pourrait parler de
South
Palestine.
Sudan,
Dans tous les
where
cas,
there
ce
are
que ça nous a
currently
montré ces derniers
atrocities
mois, ces
being
dernières années,
committed. So
c'est
all
que
of
le
this
consensus
has
de
shown us in the
Davos,
past
que la
years
diplomatie
that the
issue
consensus
des
of
consensus de
Davos
1945
and the
est en échec.
diplomacy
En échec
efforts
profond parce que c'était une
of
diplomatie qui a été faite par et pour l'intérêt
45
capitaliste et pas pour
have failed
l'intérêt des
because
peuples. Et c'est bien sur
only
ça qu'il
the
va falloir travailler
capitalists
profondément.
have
C'est
been
une
considered
autre
with
diplomatie,
their
une
interests and not the
diplomatie
interests of the
féministe, une
population. So we
diplomatie
need
de
to change
coopération,
tax.
une diplomatie
We
par
need
et
a
pour la
feminist
classe
diplomacy,
travailleuse.
a diplomacy
Alors,
of
on a des
consensus and
urgences, il y a des
collaboration
débats urgents et
for
importants
and with
à
the
avoir
working
à gauche, c'est
classes.
sûr.
This is urgent.
Mais
It is
profondément dans le
clear
temps,
that we need
on
this.
a aussi besoin d'avoir
But
ces discussions-là
we
parce
also need
qu'on a
to
besoin
have
d'alternatives
this
politiques
discussion
durables.
because
Et la paix,
we
elle
need
doit être
politically
durable.
sustainable
Et
initiatives
donc,
that are
on le voit, y compris
alternatives.
avec la question de la
Peace
Palestine.
should be
Oui, il y a un
sustainable.
cessez-le-feu, il y a un
We
génocide, il y a un
talked about
cessez-le-feu,
this
mais si
when
on
we
veut une
talked
paix
about
durable, il
Palestine,
faut
where we
aussi
agreed
construire la
that there was a
démocratie et
genocide
donner
taking
et
place and that we
respecter
needed a ceasefire. But
là,
if you want
les
sustainable
peuples
peace, then
et
you
leur
have to build
permettre
up
de pouvoir
democracy
avoir cette
and listen to the
autodétermination
voice
des
of the
peuples.
people
Et c'est
and
bien
give them the
ça
right to
sur lequel on va
self-determination,
aussi
and that is
devoir
what
travailler.
it's all
Donc je ne veux
about.
pas m'immiscer
And that is something
dans
that
ce
we
débat
have to
parce que
work
honnêtement
on.
je ne me
I
sens
don't
pas
want to
assez
keep
compétente
going.
et
Instead,
assez
I
instruite
think
pour trancher aujourd'hui le débat qui
everybody knows what it's about, and the debate
je
was
veux
still
juste être très rapide
important.
ensuite
It
sur
was
les
important for
stratégies
us to have
électorales
this
et ce que
discussion.
tu as pu me
Just
poser comme question.
a little bit about the electoral
Parce que à gauche,
strategies.
pour être majoritaire, là aussi, on a les temps
I was
courts
asked
des
a
élections
question
qui
of
souvent
how
nous
to
contraignent. Et je crois que Connie a très
gain
bien
the
montré aussi comment
majority
les
for the
coalitions de droite
left,
et d'extrême droite
and
contraignent les
sometimes
convergences, et parfois, tant mieux.
in
Honnêtement,
elections
s'il y
we
a
are
une
forced
convergence à
into
gauche, un nouveau
alliances,
Front
and sometimes
populaire
that's
à
even
gauche,
better.
c'est parce que
If
en
there's a
France,
new
c'est parce
alliance,
qu'on
a
a
new
l'extrême
left
droite
alliance,
au port du pouvoir.
and if we
Sinon,
manage
je
to
peux vous
forge
dire que
new
tous les
alliances,
partis de gauche
then
seraient tous partis
because
seuls
the
et qu'il n'y aurait
far
pas de
right is
convergence.
in power,
Tous.
otherwise there would be a lot of
Malgré,
division between the
voilà.
left
Donc,
parties,
un
and there
mouvement,
wouldn't
le
be
mouvement
any
social, la
unified
réalité de l'extrême droite
left,
contraint
despite everything
la
that we
gauche,
keep
et
telling
tant mieux,
ourselves. So
à se rassembler à certains moments électoraux.
it is is being pressured by the right, by the far right. They forced us to forge this alliance. And if there are contents that are not truly consensual, and of course that happens. Also in social democracy, we know a lot about this. We've had a lot of experience with that. Then we pay for it dearly. So that means that the left is failing. So we need very ambitious goals in order to forge broad alliances that But as I said, we need to be ambitious about the contents. There's a certain relationship between the forces, and we need to stand up against the far right. And we also need to make sure that the left can succeed. The social demands are the most important thing for the left, the requests made by the trade unions, and this is what we need to focus on. It takes a lot of time because also of ideological fights, and on the other hand, it's really important that we stand up to the extreme right that has been in power in many European countries for a while now, and there's a tension between the maximum possible alliance and the urgency of what we need to work on.
Many thanks, Hélène. And I give now the floor to Magne.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for, do you hear me? Yeah. Many interesting and inputs from the audience. Generally speaking, I would say that I like the heading of this session, which is, as I understand it, about how do the left behave in order to create support from a majority of the people for a change, social and progressive change. This is something I agree upon, and I think this is a part of the strategy of the Red Party in Norway, and the reason that we have had some success, as Bjørnar Moxnes mentioned in his video. One of the key elements, I think, is to avoid the continuous weakening of the trade union movement in our countries. And I won't go more into that, but I think that's a very important way to communicate with the working class and prevent the increase of the far right. So to the peace and war topic that is has been quite important also in this discussion, and which unfortunately is a bit divisive, dividing the left. I think, as Hélène said, it's one moment here is that the distance from Moscow is important. If you have Russia on your border, like Norway, having the biggest nuclear weapons strategic arsenal, some 100 kilometers from our borders, maybe that contributes, of course, to fear among the people. And yet, I think if you look at the left, also in Norway, we are much more clever at supporting the Palestine nation than the Ukrainian nation. And that cannot be about geographical distance. There must be some other explanation. I also had yesterday at a workshop, I heard an intervention from Sinn Féin, a representative of Sinn Féin. And he said something interesting. First, let me say something about Ireland and Norway. Ireland and Norway, they have in common that they are small states, small European states, on the border of the seashore, but they are different in the sense that one island is outside of NATO and quite far from Russia, whereas Norway is inside NATO and very close to Russia. But interestingly enough, Sinn Féin and the Red Party seems to be agree upon the fact that they want to increase or strengthen the national defense. And the reasoning from Sinn Féin, as I understood it, was that they wanted to strengthen the Irish defense because otherwise the political forces in Ireland would work for a NATO membership. So it is important for Ireland to have an independent national defense in order to prevent a NATO membership. And the point of perspective from the Norwegian Red Party is that Norway is a member of NATO, but the Red Party wants to work for Norway to become independent of NATO and the US. So how do we do that? Yes, we do that by strengthening our national defense system so we can be independent of US. Because now the defense in Norway and the defense in Europe, as I think in general, is totally dependent on the United States. And how do we come about that problem? The only way is to build an own independent defense system so we can defend our own country and we can help other countries if they are attacked. So, thank you. That's enough for now, I think.
Thank you, Magne. I give now the floor to Cornelia.
It's not so easy to answer the different questions because what is solidarity in the concrete field? From my point of view, the fight against the militarization of the EU is also part of solidarity against the people in every country, because the militarization is going in the direction of the escalation under the condition of nuclear weapons. And that means we have to looking for which ways we can avoid such escalation.
Please maybe refrain from doing the applause in the middle of speeches. Please do it only at the end so we can not interrupt each other. Thank you. So start your sentence again, please.
No problem. When I come to the thesis and antithesis, what I reflect is a German discussion what we have in this moment, yes? And it's not so easy to find a concrete, the answer, the very good answer and the bad answer, of course. And to looking for the synthesis is also complicated. I would say, we have to looking for, of course, we have to avoid a far-right government in Germany. Because when we see, and I think David spoke about this, if you bring together the German militarism under the far-right government, I can tell you that it can't be a solution, especially under the condition that the German government is speaking since 2014 to be or to have a ruling function in Europe. The ruling role of Germany in Europe since 2014. And also the German chancellor announced that the German army should be the strongest conservative army in Europe. That is going in the direction of new kind of militarization. And you see it also in the cities, you see it on the picture, in the advisement and so on. So, but how we can get the majority to avoid a far-right government includes the AfD. And I think for that we need a coalition, of course include the German Greens, the German Social Democrats. Under this condition in which we are staying now, it's impossible. But we have to looking for, we have a lot of young guys from the green-oriented people, liberal green-oriented, left-wing people. And I'm sure that partly of them are also engaged in the Friday for Future government movement. Yes, that means also we have to looking for in which way is it possible to bring together the protection of the environment, the measures against the climate crisis, with the question of anti-militarization. And this bridge we have to build in concrete terms, and that, of course, is not so easy. Also the Social Democrats. The defense minister in Germany, he is speaking, we have to be possible to go in war. That is his position. But at the same time, we see the pressure of the conservative against the social system, the social security. And of course, the people have to pay for this war with social cuts, with the reducing of the social infrastructure. I'm sure that in the next period, we will see a lot of private-public partnership project as a kind of privatization of the public sector, public goods, and so on. So that means we have to pressure also the Social Democratic Party, please stay on your own role as a Social Democratic Party and not as a military party. And so I come to the compromise, not to the compass, class compass. What does it mean to have a class compass? That means, from my point of view, to looking for to have your perspective from the view from the poorest people, from the most vulnerable people, to the migrants, to the homeless people, to such they don't have a real voice, also to the precarious people. Also to looking for who is really who needs the help immediately, also in our own society. And so I think we have also to fight against dehumanization. The migration policy, especially the new law, what's going on in January, the European law GEAS reform, this law is connected with dehumanization. And of course, all wars are connected with question of dehumanization, we and the other, only in this direction. And we have to looking for in which way we can defend the law for everybody and not the law for the strongest. That means we have also combined our struggles, our social struggles, with the question of the democratization. Because the vulnerable people, the people without rights, need the law for everybody. And that means we need a stronger democratization of our society. So I know it's not everything what I could answer. Yeah, last point. Last point, also, I had in my contribution also some words about the German sociologist Klaus Dörre, and he is explaining what the left in this moment, how he would be described in this moment. Was it the German left, but maybe is it not only the German left? Higher educated in the urban areas, we have the overview of what is going on, we have this capacity also to analyze everything, but we are looking from the perspective of the higher level of the class society. And the whole question is how we can, and that was also in your speech, how we can find the stronger contacts also to such kind of working class. It's connected with the industry sector. It's connected with more conservative values because they know and they have the real fear that they lost their working class status. And for that, we need another kind of social ecological transformation, and that include, of course, the question of peace. Thanks.
Thank you, Connie. I give now the floor to Sokrátis for the last words.
Okay, dear comrades, it's a very interesting dialogue, but it's not an easy discussion that we have opened. But there are answers that we need, and the citizens need answers. So let me start from the beginning. The reason that I was part of the Communist Youth of Greece many years, many decades ago. The peace is the fundamental principle of the leftist ideology. Why? No, not only because it's a value, but because the citizens, the people, the working class, need peace, life, and security. So we need to give answers about this. The last years, we have a problem. We allow the neoliberals to give answers about security, but they work for the profits of the defense industry and for their chairs. But we have to give answers about security also, because peace is connected with security, life of the citizens, of the working class, but of all the citizens, it's connecting with security. So the first is, don't let the neoliberals monopolize the security policy, because it's connected with peace, with life, and the needs of the working class. So, Syriza is against, we are opposed to the rearm EU. Why? No, not because we are against security of our countries or the societies. No, because they will spend 800 billions and we will lose them from social policies and from health, from other social policies for the profits for some of their own industries and not for our country's industries, if I'm speaking on behalf of Greece. So first of all, we're against the rearm program because of this reason. Because in our parliament, we believe and we vote many times for Greek defense programs and for the autonomy and independence, if I can say, of the Greek security system, but also for the European security system. Now, the answer, of course, of security is that we need, and I said already declared it, an independent foreign policy of European Union. And this was necessary also to the Ukrainian problem. That is a very big problem open today. Let me say something. The European leaders are not informed about the problems in Ukraine 7 years ago, the invasion. What they did? We, as Syriza, from the first day, we condemned in the strongest possible terms the invasion of Russia in Ukraine. Why? First of all, because we stand for peace and for peaceful solutions of all difference and disputes, but also because we reject any violation of international law, because we're afraid also for our country, for our citizens, but also we stand with solidarity to Ukrainian people, because we declare also that we reject any violation to state borders and to national sovereignty. And we cannot change the rules. We have the same rule. That's why we are in the lefts. But we believe in Europe, and we believe strongly that if Europe had an independent foreign policy, must prevent the invasion with peaceful measures and sanction if it was necessary, before the invasion and after the invasions. The leaders of the Europe, what they did? Only to be the tail of the powerful and changing positions after Mr. Biden, Mr. Trump. I don't know if you've seen it already, but there was a pendulum in the policy of Europe. There was not policy, only following the United States with no strategy. So that's why we believe that the economy of war is not the answer, because the answer is not to send more arms to Ukrainian youth to die in the fields. Of course, this is not the answer. The answer to the problem is the state sovereignty and the stop of the war now, the ceasefire, with the rights of the citizens of Ukraine in the first line. That is the solidarity that we believe. But if we have the Europe with no independent foreign policy, no foreign policy, I can say, there is no future for the working class and for the societies in Europe. And this is a very big problem, because if you have foreign policy, a necessary part is the collective security system. Because if I can continue your speech about neutrality, if the question is peace, there is no neutrality. If the question is the human rights, there is no neutrality. If the question is international law, there is no neutrality. And what is the problem now? Is that after the theory, the policy of Putin, we have the policy of Trump, the policy of Netanyahu, that all of them are against international law. It is the law of the powerful. But this is not only the law of the powerful, it's the law of the jungle. And this is the end of this road that we are today. That's why we have to enlarge, if I can say, the cooperation of, I've seen it there, the left, the green, and the progressives. Not discussed only between the lefts, we will discuss also in our Congress about this, but this forum have in the court to discuss all the progressive forces of Europe about this foreign policy of Europe, security, collective security of Europe, if I can answer. Because we've said also to our government, don't send arms to Ukraine, send a hospital, send the diplomacy there to solve the problem, to stop the war, not to continue the war and to give arms to kill people there. Of course, we condemn and we're against the imperialism of Putin, and I've said it already from the beginning, from the first day. So, let me now pass to the second big question that is opened. Of course, this is a dialogue that cannot stop so quickly, but let me pass now to the second dialogue that is open about what we propose, what we've done already, and how we are looking the future about the progressive forces in our country, but also in Europe. As I've said already, this forum, we believe that the target, the scope was to create an opportunity of dialogue to cooperate. Why? Because against the neoliberal forces and the capitalists now in Europe, we have to create new potential from the left side, from the progressive side. And I think that we have we are now in the state that we can understand that we cannot solve the problems by ourselves, even from our parties in each country. I cannot speak on behalf of you, but I can speak on behalf of Syriza. We believe that also in Greece, but also in Europe, there is a necessity, an historical necessity, to have cooperation even in election cooperation, not only in movements, for example, in the unions or in the local authorities, but in the elections to have cooperations of the progressives. And that means the lefts, the socialists, the greens, the progressive, but also the Democrats. Not the Democrats that we realize as parties, but if you understand now that the problems of peace, of rule of law, of democracy, constitutional problems that we have in Greece are new problems that support also the rhetoric of far right, we have to give the answers from the progressive part. So there is possibility of new alliance with citizens that believe in democracy. They cannot understand or they not declare that we are progressive people, but believe in democracy. So there is a new opportunity to have wider alliance. So in Greece, we have already proposed three kinds of cooperation as Syriza to all the progressive parties. We propose to have common behavior road in the parliament, to vote together and to have common proposals about laws. The second is to have an open dialogue forum with all the progressive parties, that means including social democrats and all the left parties, about a common proposal for the elections. And the third part is to have common initiatives in unions and in authorities about common fronts, if I can say, with the movements in the society. So I believe that also this possibility is for the lefts in Europe. And we have already have a dialogue inside our party, the European Party, the European Left Party, about this proposal that we have to open in the society. This proposal gives us two values: the better visibility in the society, but also a governmental view. because the citizens don't need only values, but they need something that can solve problems in their life. They need better income, lower taxes, better health conditions, if I can say, security, housing. So if you have to give answers to the society, you have to propose also a scheme, if I can say, that can earn the next elections. Not only that they can see your answers, but answers that can implement it. So because also Syriza, you know, we have a great governmental experience, and we have to use it to exploit this for the needs of our citizens and for the European citizens, because Europe is our home. We propose this direction, a wider cooperation with the forces of left, of Greens, of progressive, of socialists, including all the citizens that believe in democracy and peace, because now it's the need for a left answer to this crisis in Europe and the whole universe. Thank you very much.
Many thanks, Sokrátis, and many thanks to all panelists for your contributions, and also many thanks to all who took the floor from the audience. We will have now directly, as announced, the reading of the final declaration.